Hi, this is Chris Dixon. This is the a16z podcast. I'm here today with Benedict Evans. We're going to talk about Apple. Hi, Benedict. Apple had their earnings yesterday. What do you think?
Well, it's a set of puzzles. The iPhone, say, unit sales were better than expected, and the stock shot up, not surprisingly. And China's doing well, and the iPad isn't. And so there's a set of interesting questions in there. The iPad is the thing that certainly I'm looking at most in those numbers, because if you look at them on a look at unit sales on a trailing 12-month basis, which strips out the spikes from new product releases, basically the sales went up in a straight line until about a year ago, and they've been flat for the last year. And for the first quarter or two, you could say, well, every Apple product has a sort of product cycle, and the new one comes out and the sales go up and then they go down a bit and then they go up for the next one. But that isn't actually what's happened. It's just been flat. And that has never actually been the case for the iPhone.
And so, and some people say that's because the upgrade cycle is longer.
Well, I mean, so there's a bunch of things to sort of talk about in order. There is Android competition. There is the upgrade cycle. There is the extent to which it's a useful product for people coming from a PC or for people coming from a smartphone. The thing about upgrade cycle is, on a kind of purely mathematical basis, if the upgrade cycle is any given number, that shouldn't change the growth rate. If the upgrade cycle lengthens, then that should pull the sales down. But it shouldn't of itself suddenly cause a halt in growth. For that to happen, you have to have kind of run out of new people to be buying the thing, and that's really what
tell me if I'm,
the issue.
Isn't it true that the tablet appears to be more expensive to people because it's not subsidized the way mobile is, and therefore it could just be a rich person's device?
Yeah, but you say that, but it's also only $300 or $400, so it's not.
I mean, let's say a luxury device. It's
but then compare that to a PC.
You've got everything. Like you've got a laptop, you've got a phone, and if you've got excess money, you say, "Hey, I'm going to have a tablet, so when I'm lying on the couch, I can, But that's
the presumption, isn't it, as to what is the use case? Is it a PC or a supplement, or is it a PC replacement? Okay. And I think but that is the question. So if you have so there's an argument that says, look, most of what people do on their home computer is browsing the web or playing games. And you can actually do all of that perfectly well on a tablet, particularly like a 10-inch tablet. And in addition to that, you have all sorts of great dedicated apps from e-commerce companies, from all sorts of things that you might want to look at. And so a tablet ought to be able to substitute a lot of your desktop PC use, your laptop, your computer use. And in the meantime, you have the PC replacement cycle lengthening out, very obviously, so people are not buying new PCs or buying them at much longer intervals in order to replace their existing PC. So you would hope or expect to see tablets coming in and being the new purchase that you buy as well instead of a new PC, rather than as well as a PC. But it doesn't seem like that's happening yet. It seems like what's happening, as you say, right now, is they're being bought as an accessory. And you have that PC, and that PC is now 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. It's still actually a perfectly good PC. It's running Windows 2000 or Windows XP or, Windows 7 or something, and that was actually a perfectly good operating system, and the computer that you buy now wouldn't be noticeably faster, really. And so there's no compelling need to replace that, and so you don't have that decision, well, am I going to buy a laptop, or am I going to buy a desktop, am I going to buy a tablet? And so, yeah, you're right, you're kind of, so far it's in that, well, I'm going to get one as well market. Coming at this from another angle, there's two ways that you could look at a tablet. One is that it's less than a PC, or that it's an alternative for a PC. But another is that it's an accessory for a smartphone, in that you or I would probably feel, well, I couldn't have my entire computing experience on a smartphone. I need something else, certainly with a bigger screen, perhaps with a keyboard. But it seems like where the tablet is being squeezed is that you've got a bunch of people saying, well, I'm going to keep my PC, and my PC is still going to be my main device. And you've got another bunch of people, probably quite a much larger group of people, who are saying, actually, my smartphone is all I need, and I don't need a PC at all. Or my PC is going to stay upstairs in the study turned off, and I'm going to use my PC. I'm going to use my smartphone for more and more and more of my computing use. So it almost gets squeezed in between that. And the ironic thing here is, say, that for the last 3 or 4 years, everyone who said tablets aren't going to work was saying tablets will not work because you need a PC to do all of these things. But it seems like actually, then that's not just wrong, but it's completely wrong. What's happening is people are not just saying I don't need a PC; they're saying I don't even need a tablet. I can get away with just using a smartphone. Yeah. So people are jumping all the way down.
So here's my argument, and I know I think you're going to disagree, but let me put it forth, which is, imagine an alternative universe where there was no iPhone, no Android phone, but there were tablets. So tablets were introduced in whatever it was, 2010. So we have this major new platform that came out. What you would see, for example, all these meetings that you and I have, you join me in them, where we meet with entrepreneurs, and they come in, and today what they're saying is, I've got, in half the meetings or something, they come in and they say, I've got a great new idea for a smartphone app.
Yeah.
Effectively, right?
Yeah.
And there's just massive amounts of innovation going on around that. And what I think we would see in this alternative universe where there were no smartphones but there were tablets is we would have all those same entrepreneurs be coming in saying, I've got a great new tablet app. But because these we had two major platform revolutions that overlapped so closely, the smartphone and the tablet, I think that the smartphone has crowded out app development from the tablet. It's so rare. It's a special event when someone comes in and says, "I've come up with a new tablet." Yes, everyone has an iPad version of their mobile app, but they aren't developing for that platform. So I feel like it's a developer crowding out issue.
I think I see the same data. I'm not. I think I think about it slightly differently in that the opportunity from a device that people carry in their pocket everywhere is bigger.
I'm not saying it isn't bigger, but I think.
I'm just saying
it's newer and more exciting.
But I'm saying it's because you have far more smartphones than you have tablets, and the mere fact that they're in your pocket everywhere all the time
with a cellular connection, which means you can do stuff like Uber, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Uber couldn't that kind of new functionality of delivery. Uber for X couldn't really happen with tablets the way it can with smartphones.
Yeah, but also just things like Instagram. Yeah. You could build Instagram for a tablet, but you wouldn't because you build it for a phone because it's with you all the time. And the stuff you would build for tablet would be very different. It would be like, how can you compose emails intelligently on a touchscreen? Or like a lot of it would have more UI, productivity apps, Office. Yeah, now we finally. By the way, an important point is Office is now finally going to be. Yeah, and it's
which you talk about laptop replacement. You need Office probably. And but not just Office, but like whatever comes after Office is a touch version of Office. Like we haven't seen that yet, right?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, there's the kind of the default way that people think about this is there's PCs, which you split into desktops and laptops if you bother to think about it that much, and then there's mobile. And mobile is tablets and smartphones because they're both running on this new. They're both these battery-powered, portable, touch-based things. I think that's
the wrong way to think about it.
But exactly, I'm thinking it's actually the wrong way of thinking about it. Actually, if you look at there's a long-term chart that I did of computer sales where you have desktop computers back since 95, and then laptop computers growing from almost nothing to grow half the market, and then shrinking very rapidly in the last 2 years, and then tablet computers growing, becoming like the third arm of that, and by far the biggest chunk of that. But it is a kind of a large screen, sitting down computing experience, doing a kind of a full-fat, relatively sophisticated product. And stuff that
another way to think of it is in the Christensen sense of jobs to be done, right? Like the tablet and the PC probably have more overlap in terms of the job to be done than the tablet and the smartphone have overlap.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the other thing I was going to say is that there's an argument as well, I can do this on my PC, I can't do it on my tablet. And that reminds me a lot of the argument 10, 15 years ago, should I get a desktop or a laptop? Mm-hmm. And there are a whole bunch of things that you couldn't do on a laptop, and that you would say you'd buy a desktop computer, and over time that changed. And more things became possible to do on a laptop, and today there's very little. And I think the same thing will happen with tablets. And in particular, I think a lot of the tasks that people today do that require a keyboard and a mouse either will become possible on a touchscreen, or those tasks themselves will change. Like, you won't be spending all day doing a PowerPoint sales report. You'll just send somebody a link to a SaaS dashboard or something.
Yeah.
So, but I do think, as we said,
That's,
tablets sit in the same box as laptops and PCs, at least as much as they sit in the mobility box.
I think you just made an extremely important point, which is there's really kind of three moving pieces when you have a new platform. There's the platform itself, a tablet. Yep. There's the applications on the platform. And by the way, with every major platform shift in the history of computing, brand new applications were invented, right? So, for the DOS era, there were, it was VisiCalc and was it WordPerfect, right? So you had the original spreadsheet and word processor. And then in the GUI era, you had PowerPoint and Photoshop. And in the tablet era, I would argue there should be these new killer apps. They've been the developers have been crowded out by the smartphone. That's my belief. But you made an important point, which is you have the platform, you have the apps, and then you have the humans who change. And people forget how much people will tend to adapt to the new computing environment. So, as you said, it could be that in the future people just send shorter email. It's already happened. It's not even the future, right? I mean, like the younger generation now uses WhatsApp instead of SMTP. And people will just send shorter emails. They'll write shorter reports. They'll send the link to the SaaS app. Human behavior will change dramatically.
I mean, this is the whole podcast that we did with Steve Sinofsky, and this is who, having run Microsoft Office, has this quite firm thesis that basically there's a portion of people who are doing Excel or PowerPoint or Word who actually need Excel and PowerPoint and Word and those specific tasks. But there's a much larger portion of people who are using it because that's the tool. And then their business processes get shaped around the availability of the tool. And then they look at an iPad and they say, well, I've got all these business processes that I need to do and I can't do them on that device. And it's like, well... Yeah, actually, the underlying function of your business does not require you to be doing those things necessarily. It's just the processes that have grown up around the presence and the fact of Microsoft Office that requires you to do those things. And absolutely right. We've invested in some of them. You start seeing companies and tools and ideas for accomplishing those sort of underlying business needs in very different ways. But to circle back on the point, it's like there's this division between the people for whom the iPad is not ready for them to move to from an Office PC yet, and there are the people who are almost not ready to upgrade from a smartphone to a tablet yet, who hold a smartphone in their hand and say, do you know what? I don't spend all my day looking at a screen. I spend all my day doing something else, making pots or driving a bus or working in a store or doing any number of other things that do not revolve around sitting in front of a screen. And I need a little bit of internet. I need the web, I need some email, I need some Facebook, I need a whole bunch of other services, but I don't need a PC for that, and I don't need a tablet for that. And I can sit on the couch in front of a movie and look up the personal life of that actor or how to buy that product on my phone, and that will work really well. Yeah. And so the tablet seems like it sits in between. I mean, just as another strand to point out. It's not that people are buying Android tablets instead of iPads. That's not what's going on. That's not why the sales are stalled. Because if you look at and this is actually another interesting kind of question around what people use these things for. When you look at the tablet market, feels like there's basically two tablet markets. There is the post-PC premium vision of the future that Steve Jobs laid out and that everyone kind of looked at and thought, wow, that's interesting. And Apple has probably 2/3 to 3/4 of that market. And it massively outsells the Nexus 7. The Nexus 10 didn't sell at all. It very comfortably outsells the Galaxy tablets. Kindle Fire does quite well in the US because it's very cheap, but it's not really sold anywhere outside the US and a couple of other markets, so it's kind of insignificant globally. And then you've got another market, which is $100, $125, $75, even $50 for a very plastic, basic, generic black thing that's running Android.
And is this mostly in China?
And it's partly in China. It's also, frankly, in developed markets as well. So Tesco in the UK sold a couple of 100,000 of a very cheap.
And these are used for what, watching movies and media kind of stuff?
Yeah, they're used for books. Nobody can see them. So you can see the volume of sales, but you then can't see the usage data. And this is my point, that a bunch of people buy a tablet having bought into this vision of what a tablet's supposed to be. It's a PC replacement, does all this wonderful stuff. And you look at the usage data, and Apple has 80% of tablet web traffic. and Apple seems like they've got like 2/3 to 3/4 of the volume sales in that segment. And then there's another segment of vast numbers of black plastic generic Android tablets being sold but not used online, not used to buy anything, not used for apps. Seems like they're being used a little bit as kids' tablets, a little bit to play games, a bit to play video, as photo frames.
Or maybe they're sitting on shelves.
Or maybe they're sitting on shelves abandoned because you saw the iPad ad and you thought, I'll buy one of those, and you went into a store and went, wow, I can get an iPad for only $75, and you took it home and you turned it on and you're like, this isn't very good.
So those are, yeah.
And you put it in a drawer.
Those are the new netbooks.
Yeah, it's a new netbook. It's what you saw happening to some extent with Kindles as well. So this is my point. It's not that there's a competitive issue here. It's not that Apple's getting killed by Android. It's just that premium vision feels like that's gone so far, and now it's kind of slowed down a bit. And the smartphone is actually taking on that vision of let's take the internet, the computing experience to a whole new audience.
So the other thing in Apple's earnings that I thought was interesting was the Apple TV.
Yeah, so they gave a number. This time last year, from memory, Tim Cook said that they'd sold 13 million Apple TVs in total, and now he said they sold 20 million, so they did 7 million in the last year, or it might be 8 million, or it might be 6 million, you don't know exactly, and that the total revenue in 2013 was $1 billion, and if you do the maths, that works out at a couple of $100 million in content revenue. So it's revenue from the device plus content. So people buying movies and renting movies on it.
Is that good, TVs. Bad? Like how do you
it works out at, I can't remember, it's like $20 per device per year, which is not terribly exciting.
Do you think they're becoming a real force there? Is it still a hobby, as Steve Jobs?
It feels it's all still very pre-iPod, isn't it? It's like all the tech is there, not necessarily in the right order, and it's not the user experience. I mean, it's not just an Apple TV. It's used also for the Chromecast and for the Roku and the Vudu and the Boxee and all these things. They've all got a box that's quite cheap, that's got a certain amount of content, doesn't actually have the stuff you really, really want to watch. The user experience isn't that much better from watching. It's still like a remote control and you press stuff up and down 15 times. And it's not quite there yet somehow. And so there's a set of puzzles. I mean, we did a podcast a week or two ago about TV. Yeah. There's a set of puzzles about what would have to change for TV to unlock and all these gears to unmesh and for stuff to start changing. And there's a bunch of very specific US issues around the fact that everyone pays a huge cable bill for channels they don't want. That doesn't really apply anywhere else. Doesn't apply in the UK, but the use of the Apple TV in the UK is still quite low. And the iPlayer, the BBC makes all of its content available for free online on any device at any time. The iPad app, smart TV app, you name it, it's there. Their peak viewing is 700,000 streams, and TV peak viewing is 25 million streams. So 25 million people. So it's like it hasn't quite caught fire yet. And, we've yet to see, whether all of these different rumours around Apple doing content deals or Apple doing partnerships with people will take off. I mean, as Tim Cook said, it kind of feels wrong to call it a hobby when it's $1 billion a year. But it is kind of a hobby in the scale of Apple. It's, for anybody else, that would be a fantastic business. But it's not that transformative experience that changes what it is to watch TV the way the iPhone was for a phone.
All right, last question. We think they're going to release anything big this year? Watch? New iPhones? I guess we're expecting new iPhones.
Yeah, new iPhones are given, new iPads are given. There are three things one can speculate about. There is a watch or some wearable of some kind, or potentially a platform of some kind for other people to do wearables or to connect to new iPhones. And the puzzle there, I think, is that with the iPhone and the iPod, you knew what the problem was, but you didn't know what the answer was. You knew, if somebody had said to you, would you like to be able to carry every song ever written around with you in your pocket, you'd have said, yes. The question was just, well, how do you build that device? And the same applies to the iPhone. For wearables, it's not quite so clear what that universal problem that everybody has. So, what could you say to anybody in the street that would make them buy it? This will give you, what's the equivalent of, you can have every track ever.
I think a lot of people are thinking it's going to have a health angle to it, so you want to live longer and be healthier. I don't know.
Yeah, that's not as easy and straightforward a sell. I mean, it may be the case, but it's not as easy to communicate immediately and directly why you should get that. Then the second thing is TV, which we've kind of touched on. And the third is a sort of the myth that's been floating around forever is Apple doing a cheaper phone. Because right now the average selling price of an iPhone is $600, thereabouts, and the average selling price of Android is $250.
And the 5C, I guess,
and the 5C
was kind of a letdown, right?
The 5C would appear to have sold just as well as the 4S sold last year. That's to say, it was a continuation.
Which is what Apple's always done. Is
Yeah,
the
it was
older model.
Exactly. It was a
the lower
refinement
model.
of the existing strategy. It didn't sell worth a damn in China. In fact, the 4S apparently sold fantastically well in China. Apple didn't even mention the 5S on the 5C on the call yesterday. So, but then the thing is, if Apple, and Apple has always said we want to make products we can be proud of. And 3 years ago, you couldn't make a cheaper phone that they'd be proud of in that sense. You'd have to make too many compromises. If you remember what the cheaper Androids of 2 or 3 years ago looked like, that was about right. Today, Apple could make a $300 phone, and it would be a great phone. It would run iOS 7. It would be a lovely thing. The question is how and when. How do they do that? How do they not cannibalize the high-end product? When do they decide the right time to do that is? Do they have a 300 one, a 400 one, a 500 one, and a 600 one? But even then, from a stockholder point of view, I mean, you can kind of do the mental arithmetic. They do say they do a $500, say they do a $300 phone, and they make a 30% gross margin on it, and they sell 50 million units. Well, that would blow an enormous hole in the middle of Android, but it wouldn't actually move Apple's own gross margin more than 10 or 20%.
Yeah. Okay, we're out of time. Thanks a lot.